you can grab whatever size you want to fit according to your Zonker. Let's see here. You know, I figure there's no sense in me tying on a intruder shank if you guys can't tie along with me. So let's see, grab a weighted bead.
Alex, okay. I'll tell you a story while you're tying, if that's okay.
Yeah, please. Thank you.
Okay. I used to live in Alaska, and I'm not bringing it up because I lived there, just because they have a different way of fishing it. So they would focus on their king salmon in the Kenai River District, and then the
those are the big ones.
Yeah, I mean, 40s, 50, 60, 70, 80-pound salmon, world record. And what they would do after the king run and in the silvers, which are the cohos, and the sockeye, is they would focus on flesh flies, which were egg sucking leeches, and that's all they would fish. They would fish the egg sucking leech because the huge steelhead would sit in the pools below and feed off the eggs that are coming from the spawn. Once that was done, that would be part of the season. Once further in the season, when the dead fish carcasses would break up, they would use the flesh fly, which is like a big white, like a piece, almost like a piece of bread. They'd tie a fly. As the fish would decompose, the steelhead would feed on that. And so they had a whole string of, like, for 3 weeks, first the egg sucking leech, then the pink flesh fly, then the white flesh fly. And it was really interesting for me to watch how they would interpret how they were going to catch those fish, and it worked. And so, I mean, I was a Canadian in Alaska watching these guys show me how to catch fish. And you know, there's probably other techniques, and they probably use woolly buggers, and they probably use crayfish and all kinds of other stuff, but they really focused on
that flesh fly
post spawn feed. It was really interesting to watch that happen.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have a friend of mine in Washington, was one of my first clients that I tied flies for, and he stuck with me as I progressed, which I'm very thankful for too. And he does this trip to Alaska, and they'll have a different few colors, but you know, I ordered like flesh fly type Zonker strips, which, like you said, you know, it varies at what stage that sockeye meat is, but really it's not as bright as you would think. So it's almost kind of pale grayish, very light orange. And he said, you know, these rainbows, which are just huge, like lake run rainbows and stuff, basically what we would call steelhead, just go nuts on these flesh flies. And his funny thing, I tied randomly, he wanted some munkers. I want to share a quick story about the munker too. So I've sent that fly a few different places. And I've admitted I'm not the originator of it, just kind of fine-tuned it, or not fine-tuned it, but just kind of tied it the way that I liked it. You know, Kim Sorensen in Denmark is the one who I guess is the originator, but really people, you know, it always bugs me. I'm digressing one more time. It really bugs me in the fly fishing industry when people are like, that's my fly, I invented it. And I want to be careful. I don't want to be dogmatic and say that you can't invent something. I think the intruder was pretty unique. Haken Norling with the temple dog, but really most things are borrowed ideas, you know, a conglomeration of it. I mean, even if you look at an intruder, the 2-stage idea, then you look at a woolly bugger, you're like, well, it's kind of like 2 stages, soft hackle in the back and some I mean, so I'm sure somebody was doing it before Kim, maybe not. It doesn't matter to me, I don't care, but I never have claimed. I've seen people get mad. Some of them I know personally, nice people, getting mad and attacking people because it's their fly and he did a leech differently or whatever. And I'm just like, that's I don't know. I think that's silly. I'll be the first to admit everything I do is just ideas I've learned from other good tires. And so, okay, you put it together in a way that you like it, but you're not, really inventing. But that being said, that Munker style fly, the reason I got into tying it was John Giuliani on the Rapids. He gave me the idea before I knew there was such a thing called Munkers. And he said, you know what I'd really like, since you're getting into tubes, Alex, is if you could get some sort of weighted tube, which you can, and have like a rabbit zonker with a muddler head on it. He goes, I would order a dozen of them from you. And that was like my first ever order. So I'm like, okay, what's the first thing you do? I'm like, I'll go on YouTube and like look up, does anybody tie something like that? And of course, the Munker came up from Kim Sorensen in Denmark, which they made for sea trout, which are brown trout, and Atlantic salmon. So that's the idea. But since then, he's done really well on the St. Mary's with them. The guy out west who goes to Alaska, he fishes Washington rivers, and he has gotten some just really beautiful big bull trout out there. I've never caught a bull trout. I guess I've seen pictures, and he loves small, simple Munkers like that, and swears by him. But he went up to Alaska, and his favorite fly, and this kind of surprised me, was I tied him a fleshed fly Munker, just kind of a series of them, really simple. Now, flesh colored rabbit wing, and I'd kind of mix my deer hair when I stack it, just for fun, messing around. I take like cream color and maybe orange color, and I digress one more time. That's the fun thing with deer hair. You can really, once you get comfortable with it, I mean, you can really mess around with tips one way, tips the other way, changing colors. It's a whole world of deer hair. And if you go online, you'll see really, really incredible deer hair flies where I actually have no idea how they do it. They get colors all over, and it's shaped like a frog's head, and it's fun. Deer hair is pretty cool. I think it's worth getting into. But he loved that flesh colored Munker fly, and he said it must have just been I was throwing something different to these fish. It was fleshy, but it was just doing something different, and he had good success. But yeah, I've never had success on the Great Lakes with flesh flies after the post spawn of salmon, though. I don't know if our fish just aren't in tune with that or not, so I don't know. It seems like a Alaska thing. So okay, let's do one more Zonker fly. I'm gonna do this one. Well, we'll do egg sucking leech. We'll do black and orange, since you mentioned it, and I'll just show you another real simple way. Now, if you as you progress, you can get rid of the bead. You don't have to have the bead. You can tie a body. You can add dubbing and flash back here if you want to. You can make it any way you want, but I'm just going to do it kind of
a very small amount
simple. Just we can all tie it. I know we'll all have the material, and so same thing. I'm halfway back on the hook, maybe 3/4. Like I said, if you're newer to tying, always give yourself maybe just a little bit more space, and as you progress, you'll get cleaner and cleaner with your threads, and you'll find you need less and less space to finish a fly. I'll add a little bit of glue onto that. You can even take your bead and kind of spin it around on the glue so it's all over it. You don't really need to take the glue and get all over with it. You can just put it in one spot and spin the bead around if you want. I'll just crisscross it in a few different spots just to make sure it's good and not going anywhere. Okay. Perfect. And this time, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to add just a, well, no, I'll add the hackle after. So we'll go right towards the rabbit strip again. And this time I'm going to use a black one. You can use whatever color you want. And you can see the strip is totally square. I'm going to go ahead and do that tapering it down into a V. And like I said, what I do, if I'm cutting on the top side, I'll fold all the hair. You can wet your finger a little bit just by looking at it, and I'll just kind of press and fold that hair down. That way I don't cut through and cut off more than what I want. I'm sorry, I gotta do this kind of down here instead of my hand way up, but I'll show you the taper again. So I'll pull one side, and when you do that, go ahead and just kind of pull out so you get any excess hair free that's trimmed. And I'll confess, doing it this way with the scissors, you'll never make it look as pretty if you laid it down and tried doing it with a razor blade, you know, as perfect as a V. But it doesn't have to be perfect. It does the same exact thing. And I find that to be the just easiest and fastest way. So you can see now, I kind of pull it, and it's a lot thinner in the back. And so just one more time, you can see I got it down to a V. You can see mine's really not even perfect, but the main point is that it's fatter in the front and skinny's out to the back. And I cut my slit again. Can you guys remember me cutting that? I can't really. Let me see if I can show one more time. I know you guys know, but just a couple millimeters just at the head of that fly. And like I said, I push the slit just a little bit past my tie-in point. And another thing I didn't mention either is that as far as a secure fly, this also is a more secure way of tying it, because you think of it, if you just tie it in straight, you know, the pressure to pull out, it's just kind of, you know, I mean, if you tie it down well enough, it won't pull out. You know, you could potentially slide it right out, but when you lock it in reverse, it's kind of like pulling against itself in a sense. I'm not saying it's impossible to undo it, but it's a lot harder to do it that way. So you also get a real nice fly that you could even, I really think you could skip the glue as long as you have enough tension. But like I said before, super glue to me like that is just a cheap insurance policy and real easy to add right onto your thread. And you'll notice too that when you put kind of glue on and you cinch your thread, it kind of just cinches a little bit deeper into. And so the same thing, this one's gonna be a little bit bushier. Pull all that back, and you can really kind of pull on it here now to get it back, and just get your thread in the front of it like that. So you're not coming back down on it. Thread's just in the front. Now you can see. And I just love that trick of being able to take that rabbit hair and fold it back as a hackle. Because rabbit hair is one of the softest hairs, and you'll notice it moves so nice. Actually using that as a hackle, that will move more than any soft schlappen or hackle or anything else. So then what I'm going to do, I'm going to throw a little curveball in at you guys. You don't have to follow along with this step, but I'm going to go ahead and put a piece of guinea hackle just for fun, just to give you an idea of what you can add or do different. And this is going to be more for contrast. And I'm going to use a piece of orange because we're going into the kind of an egg sucking leech, which is all around that black with an orange head. Egg sucking leech is a great pattern. Now you could do an orange bead and put it right towards the front too. I just kind of like that bead cropped behind the wing, more in the middle of the hook. It kind of balances it out, and you don't have to, if you use a bead that way, you have a solid prop. You don't have to have anything behind that at all. So it's a really simple way to do it. But like I said, you can tie this any way you want. You could do the rabbit just like that. Have the bead out front if you like. I like using the bead both as a prop and a weight, so I'm kind of getting like double duty out of it. When I tie in a hackle, any hackle, I always go tip first. I've seen it both ways, and maybe it's just like one of those things. I can't walk and chew gum at the same time, but I cannot do a hackle tying it from the rear, and I don't think one way is necessarily better than the other. Like I said, I've seen great tyers do it both ways. I always tie my hackle in right at the tip. So when I lock that hackle in by the tip, just a few good wraps, I always fold the tip backwards and catch it one more time. So I've kind of reverse tied that tip in, and that really helps to secure that in. And then I just trim away that little tip that I reversed. I pretty much always will reverse tie a hackle tip, and it makes it a lot more secure. You tend not to run into it. You start winding and the tip just slips out on you. Okay, so what I'll do here, I don't always use hackle pliers, but when the hackle stem is really not long and I can't grab it, I will. So now guinea is really kind of a thicker stem, the stiffer stem bird, I should say. So what I'll do is actually pull the hair off the far side. And so I'm just tying in. So I'll do one full turn with all the hackle on, and then I'll strip a side of it. And I find it lays in a lot nicer. Also comes out a little bit more sparse. Otherwise it's hard to tie it in as clean. I find it tends to get real bulky at your tie-in point. And you can use it all up. Generation to generation, like lessons are passed on. And you can see it happens to everybody. Something happened with this guinea hackle where it came loose. So I'm going to undo it, tie another one in. So if something happens and it gets all buggered on you, don't worry. Just grab another one and tie it in there. Sometimes that just... And so I'm going to do that one more time.
Wow, that's amazing, right? Interesting. But do you want to see a breakthrough? I just saved even more. Bundling solid home and auto insurance. Totally online in only minutes.
Somebody's in Ottawa.
Yeah, I'm in Ottawa.
Okay, there it is.
What's the house? What's the idea of the guinea hackle? What are you trying to represent or trying to?
Yeah, so I like to do this sometimes. So this rabbit strip obviously is a little bit bulkier. So there's a little bit more hair there. And the guinea gives kind of a nice accent, you know, with all the dots. But also what it does for me is it kind of holds the hair back now as we go in to tie the flash. We're not getting, you know, it can get kind of tough when you get like, that's nice. I like it. So it's a much longer, nicer piece of rabbit. But if I go in and try to tie flash now, I'm getting all hung up into the rabbit hair and everything else, and it kind of makes it tough. This just kind of pushes it all back for me. And so now it's going to be a little bit easier for me to tie in the next things. And I like to, like I said, I like to strip one side of that guinea hackle, so it's just not too bulky at all. And essentially just a little bit of an accent. And so what I do when I finish tying, I like to tie kind of behind it and in front of it, behind it, in front of it. And then when you tie off any hackle, what's really nice is to kind of pull it straight, almost perpendicular to your shank. And one nice thing about that, and that's a trick I just learned from Davey McPhail videos, is if you think about it this way, if you tie a hackle in and you just tie it off that way, its natural tendency, I mean, all the pressure is to come back, to unwind. If you're trying to finally get it tied in and you kind of go in front, behind, so it sticks, and then just pull it straight, its tendency isn't, the pressure isn't to come unwound, it's kind of to go like straight back. So it just helps to hold it in really nice. Does that make sense? You've kind of changed it for, yeah. So like I said, simple little trick. The in front, behind, for whatever reason, just kind of seems to like hold it tight in place. So then you can take it and pull it straight. Otherwise, if I feel like if I just kind of do a few wraps this way and then try to pull it, the whole thing wants to like shift on me. Where if I just simply behind, in front, behind, pull it straight, and it just stays right there. So
That makes perfect sense.
yeah, you know, honestly, I will say this, and there are so many tires I know that are so much better than me. There's just some things I'm not good at tying. Honestly, really the difference that I found, and you know, and when I say a really good tire, I guess what I mean by that is, you know, somebody who takes a pattern and aesthetically looks really good. It's really clean. It's really nicely tied. Honestly, I think at 95%, I'm just throwing out that number. I mean, I think the majority of it is just really small details. Is all it is. It's just being clean from one point to the next. Very simple little techniques. You know, your thread sometimes you'll notice starts to almost want to split and it starts getting fatter. So you just spin your bobbin like that and it like tightens up your thread. Again, it just simple things like that little Davey McPhail trick right there, just stripping one side of your guinea hackle or any kind of hen hackle, mallards, teals. I love them. They add a cool accent. If you don't strip one side, it gets all like bulky. And instead of being like really tight against that rabbit where we're keeping it, it'll actually start to kind of like nose out, you know, and you lose that nice look and taper. So very simple things, you know, like locking the hackle stem perpendicular, stripping one side of the guinea, you know, like I said, I think it really comes down to just really small details is eventually what makes a fly or a fly tyler get better. It's not some crazy thing like, well, if I just get the most expensive material or the nicest thing, it's that doesn't really do much, you know, without good technique. So I'm going to add flash the same way. And we're going to do this egg sucking leech style, black and orange. And, you know, and I'm looking at this right here, and I'll be honest, probably could have had that leech just a little bit longer. That would have looked nicer. It's a little short and fat there. So yeah, it'll still fish good. I'll use it, but just kind of a point I'd like to make. So I'm just going to grab some orange flash. You can use whatever, or maybe some copper is what I'll use, a bright copper. Oh, I should show you guys this. Do you guys mind if I show you my flash caddy that I made real quick? And this is nice because it's kind of how I organize my flash, because if you got flash in bags and in a drawer, man, that becomes a hassle. You're pulling that stuff out and it seems like you're losing flash. So what I did, these are like kind of two little homemade things. You can buy them too from a fly fishing place. The first one is that I'll show you was a like where they kind of display bow ties from Men's Warehouse. And the other was just something really simple. I took a paper towel dowel and put like this foam thing on and cut slits just to run my stuff through. But let me show you real quick. So this, my flash here is just all on that was like a tie display. It's just got two things in it. So I can just leave all my flash out and just grab it. I did this one for my, I can kind of see, for my angel hair. It's just on a little dolly like that. I'll tell you what, that makes life a lot easier and a lot more simpler. I got sick of going through bags of flash and having that stuff go all over. So that's my little tip of the day on how I organize flash. If you go into a men's warehouse or a place where they rent tuxedos, ask them for one of them bow tie display things, and you can take all your flashabou or whatever and punch a little hole and just slide it in, and you have it forever. You're still gonna lose some, but it's way less than you ever would have. So I like making life easy. I finally made a pegboard and stuff like that. For after a while, you'll get sick of going through your drawers. You won't know what you have. And, you know, to each their own. I'm just one of those guys. When I can see everything that I have, all my stuff, it helps me be more creative. It helps me know what I have to, and kind of is fun, you know, it gives that process. You see all the different colors and feathers. Okay. Like I said before, I'm kind of holding it up, almost kind of into the wing on both sides. And this is just aesthetics. I just like my flash coming like kind of up and out with it. I don't like it too messy on the sides. Who knows? Maybe it'd be better on the sides for fish. This is just how I like to do it. Like I said, just nice and easy. Get that flash at a few different lengths, and it won't gum up and stick together on you. And I like a few pieces to at least go out as long as the wing, maybe even just a little bit longer, and you'll notice it kind of teardrops in the water. It looks good. One tip I would say is, and I've noticed this a lot in a lot of fly tires, is they kind of use flash more like a afterthought, just kind of pack it in at some point at the end because they forgot about it. I prefer to treat it more like a material, you know, like as a specific stage in the fly. I like it tapered. I like it going with the wing. You can exaggerate your wing taper with it in the water, and it looks nice. So I don't like being just mindless with flash and just packing some on at some point saying, oh, well, you know, you got to have flash in a fly. You know, I like to put it in a certain spot. And, you know, with a fly like this, I like it up and with the wings. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to spin some fox hair for my finish. Now you could use orange marabou or orange slapping, any kind of soft tackle, but I just want to show you guys, you know, simply the idea of spinning fox. You'll see it in intruders and stuff quite a bit as a prop. It works good behind marabou too. Let's say you just want a simple marabou fly. You could spin some fox hair in a loop and kind of have it as a prop. We already have the bead, and we have this rabbit hair reverse tied. So I get to use it now just kind of as a hackle. And I like using fox and stuff. Sometimes it's real durable as well, and just something else. So I'll take like a orange foxtail here, and I'll keep this fairly sparse. And dealing with fox hair or any hair, you know, I like to hold it. You don't want to remove all the under fur ever. If you go on a video, they'll say take out all the under fur. You have to have some for structure. And then also I'll look at the guard hairs, which are the long. So under fur is the really soft, fluffy stuff that goes about halfway. Guard hairs are the longer, straighter pieces. And you can take, some of them are just uncontrollable. So I'll kind of remove just a few. So I have a balance of guard hair and a balance of under fur. And that's kind of the key with dealing with fur or any good wing on a temple dog, is just a little bit of hair prep beforehand. So it's at the consistency that you like. And so how you make a loop, you can see this isn't really a ton of fox hair. I don't want it too bulky. I want it to move out there, but I want the color. So if you're going to make a loop that you want to spin in, what you do is you literally make a loop, just kind of press that in your hand, about 5 inches long is good. And you wrap a couple times, then you come around the loop a couple times. You can just do that a few times to really secure that loop in place. Move your thread up like so. A dubbing spinner really helps. This is just, you could probably home make one of these. This one came from OPST, and that just kind of sits right at the bottom of it. I'll add just a little bit of wax. This is just like a touch dub wax you can buy. The wax just kind of helps hold the material pinched in there. And so what I'll do here is I think about the overall length that I want it kind of going into it, but not too far. And then I'll spread that apart. And this does not have to be perfect either. You just want it spaced. And we're going to essentially wrap, what you're doing is you're going to wrap the fox like a hackle. Okay, now we have all this excess on the back end side. We want to trim some away, but you want to leave, 1/8 of an inch or so on it, because that kind of helps form a butt and give it a prop. You don't want to do it all the way. And so what I do when I'm spinning fox is I just kind of pinch the thread. This is why you want about 5 inches, even though I used only 1 inch of it. You need this space, and I'll just pinch the thread and give that a spin, and I'll hold that tight, and eventually it just all spins for you. Then I'll take, these are my favorite tools, by the way, fly tying tools. These are eyelash extension tweezers that you can get on Amazon. These are Vetus, Switzerland standard, made in Pakistan, but they're like $6. And I find I use these things for everything. It's my favorite tool in the world, eyelash extension tweezers. So if you got a hankering to burn $6-7 and want a cool fly fishing tool, I highly recommend these things. So people usually laugh when I tell them that's my favorite tool, but they are good. And then what I do is I just kind of fold that hair back like so. And I get that, just a nice little sparse veil of fox. Right in front. And then when we lock that in, you'll wrap around that thread and start kind of tying it in. Wrap around, tie it in, wrap around, tie it in, wrap it one more time, kind of pull it up, and then just come back into it like so. Then you can bring these eyelash extension tweezers again. Free up any fox if it's trapped. If you do it sparse enough, it probably won't be. Now, if we want to go a little bit further, make more profile, I'll do a sparse wrap of Marabou right in front, and then we'll have a big wide kind of egg sucking leech head on it. That'll be good. We just kind of, I went off the beaten path with this one because nobody had any intruder shanks, but just giving you guys some new ideas on how you can use the fur, how you can use other stuff. Really, I should have started even a little bit closer with the bead, and I have a little bit of space to fill here. You could just cut it off and fish that, and that'd be fine, but we'll do just a touch of marabou. If you guys are stocking up on material, the best marabou that I found, well, you can't read that, is the Fish Hunter Spay Marabou by Nature Spirit. It is far and above the very best. I used to think that marabou was just marabou, and these are the best marabou plumes I've ever seen. They're almost spay-like and quality. So that's the Fish Hunter Spay Marabou if you're on the hunt for marabou. So now this is good. We can get into marabou just a little bit. Unfortunately, this whole plume looks really good, but you got to strip it down right to where the stem is really thin. So you're only going to use that much. But don't let it break your heart. It costs all the same, whether you use the whole feather or only half the feather. You spent the same amount of money. So just use what makes the fly look good. And once again, I tie in by the tip, reverse that tip, come up just a little bit. Now be real careful with marabou. It's a thin stem. And so where you're probably going to snap the stem is going to be on your first or second turn. So I just kind of am really cautious here on the first couple wraps, and then you can tighten down just a little bit. So that's one full wrap. I'll do just, and remember with marabou, you just don't want to overdo it. You'll get a lot more motion. And if you want to get a couple more wraps to fill a profile, I just strip one side of it. So now it's only half the amount of material. I can do maybe just one more like this. And like I said before, kind of behind it in front, behind it in front, behind it, and then you just kind of pull that stem straight. There, and that's just real simple steelhead fly. And the nice thing too about having this super glue with a brush is you can just simply brush a little bit of glue right onto that thread, cinch it right into that. And just whip finish into the glue. Since you're in super glue, you don't have to worry. You can just do it one time. And I don't, I've been asked before, you know, I actually never got good at using a whip finish tool. Like, I don't know what it was. I just wasn't smart enough. Like, I couldn't like ever figure it out. And I saw a guy one time fly tying, and he would whip finish by hand. And I'm like, wow, that looks easier, you know? And so I found a video on how to do it. I'm not recommending that. I'm just saying, you know, like a lot of times you see somebody whip finish by hand and they probably think, you know, they're just doing that to be cool. I just was not mechanically smart enough to figure out how to use the whip finishing tool. It was just as simple as that. So I had to come up with something, and I saw that guy doing it, and through learning by hand, I've kind of found it gave me an advantage, not like across the board, but especially with the deer hair. When you're trying to lock it, it's nice because you can pull all the deer hair back and sit and whip finish it like this with the whip finish tool. I mean, you could do it, but it would take me a little bit more time. So that would be just kind of a, you know, a variation of a egg sucking leech. So when it's in the water, it's definitely gonna, you know, kind of go back. So you get that classic orange. And and black on there, which you can't go wrong with. And the Marabou has some separation from the rabbit with a little bit of fox, which anytime you get a little separation of material, you know, we got a little hackle, little fox, and just a little Marabou, helps it not to gum up. It'll kind of swim a little bit more free. But that's just a simple fly, but I show it because as far as steelhead fishing goes, you know, might not need much more. It's fun to have more, but yeah. Any questions on that one at all? We kind of use the same technique with the rabbit. Okay, Patrick, you still there, buddy?
I am. I've been paying attention. I've been learning a lot as well.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
good.
those are some wicked flies. Like for those for those of you that like want to stay, like Alex, are you comfortable tying like a temple dog style fly?
Sure. Yeah. I just, you know, if everyone's interested, I would love to. I totally understand too if some people have to go. And I just want to say, even though I'm saying these are simple flies, I don't mean that in any way as if to say, you know, because you guys are beginner tires, we have to do them. Truly, all the techniques we're using, whether you want to tie an intruder, shank, or whatever, I mean, all the techniques still apply through it. So no matter how fancy you want to get, it's still the same kind of stuff. So yeah, simple in the sense of we're just not overcomplicating it with a lot of different materials. We're just using some fundamental techniques. So yeah.
I have one question.
Please.
You know when you were putting the fox on, so did you have a separate thread? And
no,
because I didn't see the bobbin going around, I just seen you with the thread with the fox on it.
Right. So what I had done was it's called making a dubbing loop, and Scandi tires have been doing this long before the intruder ever came about. So I just want to throw it out there. A lot of people will say intruder style, but this is something that Scandi guys did to spin hackles, and maybe that came off the feather of a bird that the stem itself just wouldn't wind, you know, sometimes goose or something like that. And so what they do, let's say you got your thread on and you're gonna, maybe you got some sort of goose or fox, anything you want to spin. Not everything will spin well. Deer hair, it's you know, it just doesn't compress the same way. So soft material, any hackle, fox. And so what you're doing, so just the same thread here, as I know this thread, you can see how thin that thread is. That's why I like it. And it's pretty strong. You just simply put 2 fingers in and kind of make this loop with it. And then I'm just coming back up onto it. I'm holding, now I made a loop, you know, just simple as that. And then I just kind of am winding back on, and I'm just trying to lock that in place now. So now I have this piece of thread. Boy, it's hard to see that thread, isn't it? But I'm holding onto a piece of thread here. So now I can open up that loop, you know, and the wax was to help hold it. But now you can open that up and put, you know, all kinds of stuff in there. People, you can experiment. You can put dubbing in there, you know, if you want to dub up the whole body, even on a woolly bugger. You know, let's say you had kind of a cool dubbing that you didn't want to sit and kind of push onto your thread, or you didn't have any chenille, you could take and kind of load that up with a dubbing, take it and spin it, and that spinning just kind of locks it in. So now you got a rope, almost like a chenille rope. You know, it's like having fox on that rope or whatever you want to put in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, now I understand.
It's
I didn't see that part. I think when you put your 2 fingers down and made the loop.
Where my camera is, and this thread is just so, it is hard to see that thread. I should have tied with like hot pink thread, I guess. I didn't think about that. But yeah, so the nice thing about this is you kind of can turn almost anything. You can hackle things that you normally couldn't hackle, like fox hair you can't hackle. Now you could reverse tie the fox hair too, but this allows it to be really clean, and you can You can add flash into the fox that way, what they call a composite loop, you know, where you start adding different things. It's fun to experiment with. You know, you can make a shoulder kind of something to prop softer material. I mean, it's a really fun thing to explore because, you know, it opens up kind of a new dimension, you know, for you. So yeah. So they just call that, if you were to look it up online, how to make a dubbing loop or composite loop, sometimes they call it. Sometimes the terms are synonymous, even though they are slightly different, but yeah.
Oh, thank you,
Okay.
Alex.
So, yeah, I'm right here. Go ahead. Yes,
I
ma'am.
just said thank you.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
I've heard them say too that if your hackle's too long, where you're trying to use it like on a dry fly, you can
Okay.
do that to shorten the hackle up.
I think so. That makes sense. You know, I'm not a competent dry fly tire, but yeah, it originally started with Scandinavian tires doing just that. You know, maybe their heron was too long for
They
their
just
hook.
adjust the length of the hackle to fit what they were trying to tie.
Mhm.
I haven't done it a lot, but when I was looking at it online, they were saying that was another way of adjusting feather length.
Yeah, that's you know, I didn't think about it that way, so I appreciate you saying that. Okay, so I'm gonna try